5 years, I hope that a standard has emerged for product and engineering folks around how to implement pricing and packaging into applications in such a way that there is a very clear separation of concerns.
Yo, mic check. What's up, everybody? You're listening to the Street Pricing Podcast, the only show where proven SaaS leaders share their mindset and mistakes in pricing so we can all stop guessing and start growing. Enjoy, subscribe, and tell a friend. Now, let's break it down with your host and sought-after slayer of bad pricing, Marcos Rivera.
What's up and welcome to the Street Pricing Podcast. I'm Marcos Rivera, author, founder, and CEO of Pricing.io. And today's guest is a man on a mission. Right? I really admire a lot of the hard work he's putting in, and this is going to be a lot of fun today. I have Fynn Glover, who is the co-founder and CEO of Schematic. Fynn, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me, Marcos. It's awesome to be here.
No, awesome to have you as well, man. Why don't you do me a quick favor? Tell everyone a little bit about you and what you do.
Like you said, my name is Fynn. Right now I live in Atlanta, married, 2 kids. A year ago, I co-founded a company called Schematic. We are trying to make it a lot easier for product engineering folks to implement pricing and packaging into their applications. Really good way to think about the product is it's a layer that sits between your application and Stripe to help you manage plans and pricing and packaging and features and all that stuff.
Beautiful, beautiful. And a layer that indeed is, I think, growing more and more important as pricing is getting more and more complex. We'll get into all that kind of stuff here in just a little bit, man. But, from my perspective, there's a lot of companies who maybe in years past have thought like, well, pricing is just this thing downstream that just needs to happen and we just need to get money. But then as solutions expand and other things begin to take place, like the rise of usage-based pricing and other things like that, now you're realizing like, this actually takes a little more work to make happen and create whatever it is, quotes and invoices and other things on the other end, right? So we're going to unpack that together. But first, I want to give everybody just a quick roadmap on what we're going to do today. So this show is based on the book Street Pricing. So we're going to break it down into 3 different parts. The first one is Rewind. We're going to talk about a story of a struggle, success in pricing and packaging that you can share with everyone, and also the great things that you learned. And then we're going to bring it back to today in play. And so this is where we're going to talk about really relevant, germane topics that are, top of mind right now in these days. And then we're going to go into fast forward where it'll say, okay, well, where's this stuff going in the future? Maybe look a little bit ahead for everybody. How does that sound, Fynn?
That sounds great.
All right, terrific, man. So excellent. If you're good with that, you're ready to get street with me, then let's go ahead and start opening things up with your story. Go ahead.
For sure. I've mostly been an entrepreneur and operator in SaaS. My first company I founded when I was 23. It was originally founded as a lifestyle business. We were very much a media company, sort of bordering on location-based application. And about 4 years into that business, we pivoted from media into B2B SaaS. And it was a pretty cool experience because we grew quite quickly to the point where we could raise a Series A, start really building out the team and going after this big opportunity that we thought we saw. And, what ended up happening was the business effectively got stuck for about 3 years between $1.5 million and $2 million in ARR. And that was a really agonizing time period for me because I felt like I was slamming my head into a brick wall. Like you've raised venture capital, like you feel like you're destroying your reputation with investors. You've recruited these people, the business isn't growing. And eventually what ends up happening is the company was acquired in a small tuck-in after what was, effectively a 10-year effort. And as I reflected on that experience, one of the things I did is I went to our independent board member, a guy named Justin Tallarico, who is an incredible SaaS operator, been a CEO, helped Linux Academy merge with A Cloud Guru, helped the A Cloud Guru deal get done with Pluralsight, is now the CMO of Automox. And I asked him several months after our acquisition, what he felt like our biggest mistake had been. And he was the first person who told me, I think your biggest mistake was pricing and packaging. And I think that the biggest regret I have as a board member is when I joined the board, I didn't really push on you to go do really formal pricing and packaging discovery. And he said that to me right about a time when I was listening to some podcast where the person interviewing the guest effectively says, I think founders are good at a lot of things, but I think one of the things that they really are just not intuitively that great at is pricing and packaging. And it resonated so much. And when I look back at my journey as an entrepreneur within that first company, what I realized is I had changed pricing and packaging a dozen times in those last 3 years. And each time I had changed, I was pursuing, a gut instinct on how we might grow through this stall. And I not once went and talked to customers about how we should price and package. I had different customer types. I was transitioning from services to SaaS. There was a lot going on. And had I just known how to go talk to customers about willingness to pay, I think the business could have been a much bigger outcome. And I think that I could have achieved that outcome far faster without a lot of the pain. And it was just a particularly formative moment for me to hear Justin, my board member, describe that, because it was so clear and so clarifying.
And I have to say, man, that is a very raw and honest answer, right? When you're thinking about a story and what had happened, the fears that were kind of in the back of your mind around, trying to drive growth, you're not growing, you're feeling stuck, you don't know what to do, you're trying to drive your head through a brick wall. And but I love the fact that you were open to feedback and humble enough to ask for what, ask someone you trust, what was that big mistake that you think we made? And that the fact that he's someone with a deep experience and someone who's seen companies succeed and not succeed, that he said pricing and packaging was one of the big ones. I think all that now should sync really well with the audience and folks listening here right now, because if there's a little bit of a fear in the back of your mind that, I think there's a blind spot here in how I'm monetizing the value I'm trying to build. I mean, let's face it, right? In any B2B SaaS company, the building is hard, right? You have to, make sure you're building the right stuff, prioritizing it. You got also deals and flow. You got operational things you got to sort out. There's financials, there's boards, investors. It's a lot happening, right? And thrown at you. And then pricing and packaging in many cases tends to, fall downstream a bit, maybe even, neglected a little bit mildly. And then a quick change, a price increase 10%, that happens in a knee jerk, or happens in just hey, let's just throw something on the wall and see it sticks, is actually not really a thoughtful kind of data informed approach to pricing and packaging. And the biggest piece of data you said was talking to customers, and you were missing that.
Yeah. And at the time, as I reflect on it, I wouldn't have known how to talk to them about pricing and packaging. And having since learned how to talk about pricing and packaging with customers, I view that as like one of the most, I would say, top 1 or 2 tools that I've picked up along the way, is how to go structure a conversation with a customer about pricing and packaging. Feels to me like one of the most force multiplying tools I've picked up in the last 15 years.
Force multiplying indeed. I think there is a way to talk to customers about pricing and packaging. And oftentimes I come from a more of a value angle, because it's a little bit more meaningful to them. Sometimes when I do a pricing survey, I don't even say the word survey or the word pricing, right? I just kind of talk to them about really what they want, what they don't, and understand a little bit about their needs a little deeper. It's just something that, as a product person, came with many, many years of building software products. And I think you were also picking that up as well. So if you had to think through now, like if you were to rewind back at that time, right, when you were running that company, knowing what you know now, which is always, a lot more. What would you tell the Fynn back then? What would you tell him to do?
Well, what I did tell the Fynn of today, because a year ago I started a new company with co-founders that had been with me on that first company, and before we even started the company, we were thinking about willingness to pay for the very kind of early embryo of an idea, and we ended up doing, at least 50 conversations with folks before raising any money, before starting the company, to basically prove to ourselves that we thought willingness to pay existed in the market. And we knew this idea may not be the idea we end up building against. This idea may change over time. But if we don't have enough conviction on the early hypothesis that there is a market that wants to pay for it, we don't want to go in this direction. It's too high risk. It's too much risk to go spend another 10 years building in a slog. And so, yeah, that was effectively it. Go talk about willingness to pay at, pre-idea, right after you start the company, right after you win the first few customers, like constantly be listening for value and willingness to pay. That's the main lesson I have tried to teach myself and reinforce kind of in this second effort.
Yeah, it takes discipline to keep it top of mind as well, with the other 150 things probably happening at the same time.
Yeah.
When you do that and thinking willingness to pay and doing it this early, I think does change the decision-making dynamic a little bit. And so what is your favorite question to ask a customer about willingness to pay? If you had to pick one, I know there's a few, but which one would be your favorite question to ask them?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of depends on whether or not I'm actually running a real conversation around willingness to pay versus I'm actually trying, in a demo, and I'm really trying to evaluate, their urgency to solve the problem with my product. If I'm in a sales conversation, the question I like to lean back on is on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being you feel like this is a really good fit now, and we've already kind of talked about pricing. 1 is you don't think this is a good fit for your business right now. Where do you think you land? And that teaches me a lot about urgency. And again, I've already brought up price in the context of like the demo and the sales conversation. And so they've seen that. It's in the back of their mind. And then getting them to like really hone in on that number of fit and timeliness has taught me a lot. If I'm in a willingness to pay conversation that is more structured and more intentional and they know what they're getting into with me, I ask 8 questions, but I think my favorite is sort of a certain way through what is the maximum you would be willing to pay for this product? And again, there are 7 other questions I'm asking in conjunction with that one, but that one is always the one where rubber really hits the road.
Yeah, now you're forcing them to even say, like, here's the number I'm thinking of. And that number by itself, whatever it is, high or low, says a lot.
Says a ton, right? Like that's your value. Like that's your product's value right there.
Or your product's value, their perception, what's shaping that perception, why do they think that way, what would change it, up or down, like those kinds of things. I think that is super. And no wonder you have 7 or 8 other questions around it, right? Yeah. But I think that the urgency thing's a really interesting one that you brought up, because urgency is another signal, right? In terms of like how bad the pain is, and that price value equation that's in every customer's mind, like they're trying to balance. If that urgency, if they say a 5 versus a 1, I'm sure you follow up differently, right? But what if they say it's a 3?
Yeah. Well, if they say it's a 3, there's typically a follow-up question, which is, what would it take for us to get you from a 3 to a 5?
Got it.
And what I'm looking for there is there some change in their business, or is there some deficiency in my product? And, their answers may sort of influence, again, my follow-up, right? Like it may be, it's just not the right timing. It may be like my product is not mature enough yet for them.
And that also can reveal a little bit of what their value drivers are, like what really matters to them. But it also could mean other things outside of your product, like you said. Could maybe there's a risk thing, maybe there's a fear of change, or there could be some dependency that's outside of your product that you don't even know or see. This needs to be done first before I could buy your stuff.
Yep.
Oh, actually, I didn't realize that, right? And so those things could be really, really useful. Man, I think just these couple questions and tips for the founders, the B2B SaaS operators out there listening, I think this can be a really useful thing to think through and implement right away, man. So thank you for sharing that story. If you had, again, as you go through there and that willingness to pay conversation, bringing it early on into the journey is a phenomenal first step for a lot of folks. Because again, it's not usually the first thing they're thinking about. But taking it now from the past to the present. Team, I want to take a quick pause here to ask you for a huge favor that'll mean a lot to me. Please review and share the show. Share it with your team, your friends, your peers. Not only will it help them stop the guesswork in pricing, but it'll also help you and increase the chances that you'll take action and change for yourself. All right, much love. Now back to the show. So you're a busy guy, right? I mean, there's there's a company that you're trying to grow. There's a problem you're trying to solve. You're also promoting, and at this stage of being a founder, right? You have to make sure people know about your stuff and know how awesome it is, right? And so you're out there and you're solving these things. And I imagine though, as you're doing this, this layer between Stripe and the product, right, and trying to make sure that it's again removing the shackles that are on a lot of companies so they can price in the best possible way. You're probably seeing a lot of different flavors of the problem, right? Can you break down like some of the most common obstacles that founders have to, really fulfilling their full pricing and packaging potential?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think in my own experience, what I have learned is the founder of the early stage business often struggles with these sort of value questions. What is the value of my product? Do I have the toolkit to learn from the market about my value early on? The other part of my learning has been as a company achieves product market fit and really starts to grow, and there's legitimate customer volume, and there's rapid product maturation. There becomes a really fascinating systems problem that operates on pricing and packaging. And what I mean by that is, let's put yourself in the shoes of a $20 million software business or a $30 million software business. Well, pricing and packaging should be continuously evolving with the continuous evolution of your product. You're shipping new value constantly. And yet many companies struggle to align those two roadmaps. And one of the reasons they struggle to align those two roadmaps is, again, maybe they don't have people who are kind of focused on pricing and packaging. Maybe it's sort of an afterthought, but they also have a systems problem. And that systems problem is that there are multiple stacks. Let's call them categorical stacks that are actually operating on the pricing and packaging of the business. The first stack is your sales stack, your CRM, your CPQ product. The other stack is your finance stack, your billing product, your subscription management product, your ERP. And then there's this other stack, which is your product stack, right? It's like your feature flags, your entitlements. It's how you're metering in the product. And what's fascinating about this, right, is there is almost never some like natural connection across these stacks. And so if you want to go change pricing or packaging, a change in one place is a change in many places. And it's not just a change in Stripe and Salesforce, it's a change in the product, which means if you want to go make changes to pricing and packaging, engineering is always critical path. And that was the experience that I ran into, and I was leading pricing and packaging at a Series C company. It was effectively that. And what sort of ended up happening is it took me 2 quarters to go make a relatively simple change to pricing and packaging. And that was like an eye-opening moment, because it was like, this is a high-growth company. This change should be rapid subsequent to the analysis, and we can't roll it out. Like, our competitive advantage is speed, and we can't roll this out. And it's because of this systems problem. And so what I learned after many, many interviews with CFOs was the CFO would say, we just can never get enough engineering resources. So I shifted all of my conversations to CTOs. And the CTO would typically say, a lot of this often comes back to an early decision we made to hard code pricing and packaging logic into application code. This is described in a variety of ways. You might say, yeah, we've hard coded entitlements and we've tied them to a plan ID in the billing system. We're using feature flags as entitlements, but they're disconnected from billing. You hear this described in a variety of ways, but really what's going on is pricing and packaging logic is hard-coded in config files in applications. And so again, engineering is critical path to what should be business decisions around pricing and packaging.
That has to be the most frustrating feeling. I got to ask you, right? If your competitive advantage is speed and your ability to be nimble and react, and it takes you 2 months to make a simple pricing change, like, it's got to be, you got to want to pull your hair out.
Well, and yes, you pull your hair out because like you've got ownership, like you're trying to drive value. You feel like at least in the experience I'm referring to, I felt like there was millions of dollars in incremental value that we could drive. Couldn't drive it, right? And it actually took more than a quarter. And in that case, what's interesting too, to kind of reflect back on it, is the initial analysis had been done in late 21. So if you remember late 21, early 22, when we actually roll stuff out, the world has changed economically. And so the analysis that we had done had actually become stale. That's really frustrating because your analysis had been probably pretty correct. By the time you roll it out, you're a little bit stale, you're a little bit off, then there's all kinds of frustration in the business.
And then, so now you have stale analysis. Well, by the way, which didn't come for free. You did some hard work to get that. And then secondly, a quarter to get something rolled out. Now think about what a quarter means in a recurring revenue business, right? If you were able to do something a quarter sooner and get and reap the benefits of the new pricing and packaging, that accumulates over time. And also all the customers that you had to win during that quarter on the old stuff that you now have to turn around and find a path to the new stuff, right? Like this compounding thing. And I think that you made a really, really strong point here about the, just in general here, that there's these early decisions. Like the decision to hard code was not something that just happened. Like this was something that came way, way early on in the business. And so it's kind of this dormant problem that you don't really see just yet until you're gaining traction, growing, stuff's happening, right? Things are moving. And then it comes back and bites you later, right? And so I bet you there's folks listening right now who probably don't even know they have this problem ticking behind them. And it hasn't shown or rear its ugly head yet, but it may spring up and bite them later.
It's 100% an emergent problem. Like there becomes this moment in the business where, oh, now we are stuck. And it's inconsistent when that moment is. It can be early on, it can be later on, but there comes that moment. And there's a guy that I've talked to a lot about this whose description of it I love. He is a director of engineering for Calendly on the growth side of things. And he basically describes it as, if you think about monetization as monetization in applications, it is almost never a first-class citizen in products. It's always second class. And so as engineers, we're trying to do the fastest thing possible, right? And so we're kind of responding to the business needs and we're prioritizing based on the business needs. And so, we make the kind of like easy decision today, but in the future, that decision comes back and we end up paying back that debt for many years. And what that means for engineers often is like, you eventually have to do some type of refactor. And that refactor means you're pulling your most expensive resources off of new innovation to go work on billing, to go work on like the systems that govern pricing and packaging, to go like build these internal services like product catalog, like entitlements, like metering. And engineers don't want to work on that. And it's not core innovation. And the business is kind of dealing with a pretty significant reduction in time to value.
Yep. And then, which, by the way, is okay because at the time, like this stuff is not on a sales demo or it's not on a customer's wish list. So why make it so important, right? But it takes that discipline to pull it out. And you're talking to these companies, and I bet you're seeing this in very clear 2020 vision right in front of you. How do you help them maybe realize that this is an emerging problem that may not pop up in front of them until it's going to be really expensive and hard to fix? How do you let them realize that this is happening?
That's a great question. I think there are two things that I've noticed. I mean, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to evangelize a problem. And I'm trying to evangelize a problem in such a way that it's accessible to earlier stage companies so that they don't have to go down that path. They don't have to incur that debt. They can create a separation of concerns from day one, right? Like you should not have to hard code pricing and packaging. Should never have to do it. It should be out of the box the way you manage plans and pricing in your application. But early stage companies don't know that this is a problem yet, right? And so there needs to be a lot of evangelism and education so that they realize, hey, there's this standard that we could just plug in from day one, and this is great. I won't have to think about billing if I'm an engineer.
I think that does it right there for me, because there's a trade-off you need to make, right? It doesn't, if you're going to invest in it, which I think you're advocating for, there's something that they're not working on if they're working on this, right? And I think you have to be, I think, courageous and explicit in making that trade-off. And I'm not sure a lot of companies are willing to do it yet. And maybe it's because they just don't know, or maybe it's a problem to fight another day. Like when folks push back on you and say, no, Fynn, you're full of it. This is not that big of a deal. We can deal with it later. What's your rebuttal to that? How do you respond to the folks that don't believe?
Well, this might be another learning from company number one, but company number one, I felt myself doing a fair amount of challenger sales. And company number two, if somebody says that to me, I'm like, sounds like we're not a good fit right now. And I just let it be and kind of continue to evangelize, right? Because like my point of view is, if you're an early stage company, you may not be problem aware yet. And so we need to create a standard in the same way that, if we go back 10 years, right? Like for a long time, like people were building an authentication in-house. And then there came a point when, no, I'm going to use Auth0. Of course I'd use Auth0 for authentication. But before Auth0, I was like, I would never outsource authentication. It's always done in-house. A standard was created. And I think similarly, there can be a standard for how pricing and packaging is implemented in applications that can emerge, and companies will just plug it in. Later stage companies, it's a quite different conversation, because totally get it, totally feel the problem. Like we have full engineering teams working on billing, like it's massively expensive. But this is going to require a real refactor to like clean this up. And then the question is it worth it to do the refactor, or is it worth it to kind of continue to pay the tax of the debt? And that's a company decision. And I don't try to challenge too hard on that, because they know better than I do.
Yeah, because there's probably other downstream things related to that as well, right, that you don't have any visibility into. But I think that's, when you think about the standard, following the standard, especially in this world, has moved a lot of perceptions around what's critical, what's done in-house, what's done out of house, where it changes the shape of the stack over time as you're building new solutions in this world, right? I think AI is going to start creeping into that here pretty soon, which is a segue into the last piece here, which is the fast forward into the future, man. So really great thoughts on maybe becoming a standard. I kind of really triggered a few extra things for me, but to push things forward, right? Let's say not even 10 years, let's say 5 years from now. Like, do you see standards emerging in areas of billing and AI, which I know are two different areas, but they're the most talked about right now? Do you see anything there or have questions around that in your mind?
I mean, I think that I have lots of questions. In 5 years, I hope that a standard has emerged for product and engineering folks around how to implement pricing and packaging into applications in such a way that there is a very clear separation of concerns. And what I mean by that is the business can go make decisions around pricing and packaging that don't require engineering cycles to support. Engineering and product can focus on driving innovation. They don't have to think about billing. They don't have to think about implementing a change to support maybe kind of a new add-on or a new package or a new tier. It's just a non-thought. So I hope that emerges. I hope we play some role in pushing that standard forward. I think that there is a standard architecture that consists of 5 components that I can talk about ad nauseum, but I think that we conceptually understand what the standard should look like. Developers and product managers will need the tooling for that standard to actually emerge and manifest. In terms of the questions I have, I mean, what's fascinating to me when I look at the last 10 years, and I think this is a segue into the next 5, what stands out to me most is the B2B SaaS buyer has become more empowered in the last 10 years. And you can see that empowerment in the flexibility that they demand from vendors across three main dimensions. The first is how they buy, which has led to, the rise of hybrid go-to-market, product-led, sales-led, channel-led, marketplace-led. Like vendors are having to support multiple sales motions because the customer is empowered. The same thing is happening in billing. Vendors are having to support hybrid billing, seat-based billing, usage-based billing, some hybrid of the two. Again, comes back to a customer that wants flexibility in how they are billed and what they're paying for and what their value metrics are. And the third is I want flexibility in what I buy. I may not want to buy the full kitchen sink. I may want to buy portions of your offering. I may want to buy bundles. Give me that flexibility. And so I think what we see over the next 5 years is vendors continuing to figure out how to operationalize answers to the customer's demand for flexibility. What does that look like? I mean, I think one of the most outstanding questions that I do not have an answer for that feels satisfying to me is there's this saying that AI is eating AI. Excuse me, software is eating software because of AI. But AI is not zero marginal cost. And so software was. And I don't really know how to reconcile these because every time I talk to a venture-backed founder, they're not worried about the costs, right? Because the LLMs are making the costs so accessible. And so I'm pretty interested in, I want to try to find an answer to that question for myself because I feel really dissatisfied that I don't know how the cogs associated with AI are going to impact the way we run usage-based billing and hybrid billing. Might be the way to put the best way to describe it.
I think that's a really fantastic question because I don't think anyone knows how those costs are going to play out. In addition to that, I mean, we all have notions that they go down over time, right? I think no one would argue from what they've seen in the last 10, 20 years, right? But software eating software, even AI, the thing about AI is that it is software and then it's not as well. Like, so it is the software, it can build the software and be the underlying infrastructure for creating more of it or of itself. And it can enhance other software as well and supercharge it. So it's almost this like gray matter that's floating around here that you can shape. It's not easy to pin your finger on it, which makes it harder to even understand how the cost implications and how it'll evolve over time. It doesn't quite fit in certain boxes, if you know what I mean. So that's kind of where I think is driving a lot of the what ifs behind that.
Yeah. I mean, it's an incredible time to be alive. Like I'm blown away by what's happening personally.
You kidding me, man? I was ecstatic when I was playing Oregon Trail in like friggin', in like old mainframes and things like that. So what I'm seeing today. I mean, man, it is a fun time. And so what this next wave is going to look like, I just can't wait to see. Hope, cross my fingers and knock on wood that I'm around for the next, 10, 20, 30 years to kind of see it play out. Yeah, but listen, man, thank you so much, man. You are so thoughtful, cerebral in a lot of ways. And I love it. Love talking to you. But I do have one more question. And I use this to humanize folks, right? Because they might think, wow, Fynn is like this machine, right? Maybe he's AI and we don't even know it, right? So I want to give everybody a sense. So Fynn, what is your favorite jam, your favorite song growing up, man? What was it?
I had, there are three that really compete for the top spot. And even now it's like a game time decision. Probably it's a song called "What It Is" by Mark Knopfler. He was the lead for Dire Straits, and when he went on his own, he produced a song called "What It Is" that I think is it's one of the most beautiful songs ever made. And I listen to it when I'm out, like, and I want to go do like a big run in the mountains. That's when it becomes my turn too.
And so, how do you feel, man, when you listen to it? What's the one word if you had to describe it?
I mean, alive.
alive. What it is excellent, man. Fynn, I appreciate you coming on here and dropping these knowledge bombs for all of our SaaS community listeners. Would you be willing to come back in the future?
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me.
Man. Oh, this is so much fun. Team, that was Fynn Glover. He has great content, by the way, on LinkedIn. I recommend you follow him and take the lessons and the deep thinking that he offered today and some of the, I think, raw decision-making that he put out there. Take it home, take it a Monday, and try to get 1% better and move away from that guesswork. All right. So remember, stop guessing and start growing. Until next time.
Thank you and much love for listening to the Street Pricing Podcast with Marcos Rivera. We hope you enjoyed this episode and don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to learn more about capturing value, pick up a copy of Street Pricing on Amazon. Until next time.